profiling. I think that's an issue.
What type of profiling, Darrell?
Just I think just like a urban profiling, like just nice car, environmental profiling, like just having a nice car in let's say like a project area, nice rims on it, fixed up car. It could be profiled. I noticed that a lot. You know, and in a lot of the cases, a lot of the people that live in those areas, you know, they like to have nice things. They like to, you know, have nice looking cars. So they're going to pretty much get that. And, you know, I think they get profiled a lot of the times.
So you feel like profiling is the reason why people are being stopped by law enforcement in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to thank you for that. And I want to ask anyone else if they have anything to add to that. And I want to share this with you, Darrell. This is our 129th event. And you're not the first person to talk about profiling. But have you ever thought about profiling in the reverse way? And what I mean by that is we have quite a few white male police officers join us and say that they get profiled, that residents accuse them of being racist simply because of the way they look. So the profiling goes both ways. The outcomes may not be the same, but I wanted to give you all something to think about, because they don't like being accused of being racist based on how they look any more than people in the communities that you just described like being pulled over because of the way they look. Have you ever thought of that, Darrell? Has anyone ever thought of that?
Yeah, in some cases, yeah.
Just wanted to ask you that question because I know that a lot of times we only look at life through our own lens, mm-hmm. and never hear from other people on how they may be feeling or what their experience is. So profiling is definitely an issue.
Yeah, I've learned, you know, in my experience, in my travels and working with the program and working hand in hand and walking hand in hand with officers, you know, I've learned a whole lot and see a whole different side.
Right. It's pretty simple and pretty obvious why if people think they're getting profiled because they live in a certain area and drive a really expensive car or a nice car, to me, it's very obvious. If you're living in a public housing, how can you afford a car like that? So obviously law enforcement, you know, they're trained to, you know what I mean, get clues. If you're living in an apartment in public housing, how are you affording all these nice cars? So they come to certain conclusions, I'm sure. And you know, I mean, so I don't know what are right and what are wrong, but I know they, in the end, it's obvious for an obvious reason.
So if you're saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're justifying law enforcement pulling over somebody driving a nice car if they're living in a poor neighborhood.
What I'm saying is people have to understand that's a red flag. If they're living in a subsidized housing in a project, first of all, if they can afford a $50,000 car, why are they living in a project? That's a big red flag that I think most all people agree with, not only law enforcement.
So, James, what if that $50,000 car is driving through the neighborhood?
That's a possibility also, but the police officers don't know that.
Right. So my question to you is driving a nice car in a bad neighborhood reason to get pulled over?
It's not a legal reason to get pulled over, but I think it's a reason to pay attention. Why law enforcement would pay attention more.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, James. And I want to give members of law enforcement an opportunity to chime in on what you're hearing about what we're hearing from Darrell and James as it relates to profiling.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, James. Are you all trained to look out for, since we're talking about nice cars, are you all trained to be on the lookout for nice cars in bad neighborhoods? And if there is a nice car in a bad neighborhood, is that probable cause? Is that probable cause to be suspicious? I'm asking this of law enforcement in particular.
Looking at specific areas that may be higher crime rates or areas that maybe have more poverty issues. Most people, at least I can speak for myself, but most officers aren't really we're just not gonna look at a nice car and say, oh, we're gonna pull that car over. There's no reason for the stop. Is there something that you can kind of be like, oh, that's different? You know, you typically don't see this car coming through the area. But for me to really be suspicious of a situation, I have to have some background knowledge. Are we looking at, is this type of car being used in a lot of other crimes we have going on? Has it been mentioned before? Other than that, then, you know, it's just a regular car passing through the area. If we haven't done anything to warrant that attention, I'm going to notice it, but there's not a big reason for me to say I'm going to stop it, nor do I have a reason to try and stop it. It just really depends on what kind of situation and information that I have. And so I hope that kind of answers that part, especially when it comes to profiling and making stops for people. A lot of it goes based off of what kind of information do I have? If I see somebody who recently committed an assault and they're wearing, you know, black shirt, black pants, and they have specific, like, let's say shiny pink shoes, and I see that, I'm gonna go and say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And I'm not necessarily looking at, oh, I'm just gonna stop them because I'm profiling somebody because they're a black man. It's no, this is the information that I have. I'm just trying to match that description.
So you wouldn't be pulling them over, Romar, to ask them where they got those pink shoes from so you can pick up a pair?
Honestly, no, if sometimes I see people with some nice shoes and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool.
There are times to where people could instigate an officer into profiling, into a negative profile situation, to where they're being disrespectful or they're wanting to taunt the officer or officials, so to speak, whether it be elected officials or somebody else, into making comments that they will turn around on them. And also there are other instances to where a person may be just having a bad day and just letting their steam out and it goes the wrong way. And then, you know, situations get way out of hand with that. And because you see some instances where, you know, a person's had a bad day, they're trying to get home or something else, and something has them distracted and they're pulled over for speeding and they didn't realize that they were speeding. And then all of a sudden the situation gets way out of hand. You know, to be honest with you, that's happened to me once. You know, about 3 decades ago. I was traveling down the interstate and didn't realize I was speeding. You know, state trooper pulled me over and I was kind of a little irate about it because I was in a hurry to get home. And so once he finally, you know, got me to calm down, it was totally different. And I understood the situation and I took care of it. So thank you.
So Alan, I have a question. I have a question for you. So when you say that sometimes people do things that cause themselves to be profiled, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, like I was saying, if they were having a bad day and they were erratically driving or they were excessively speeding, and you know, the officer pulls them over, and you know they're a little disrespectful or a little bit belligerent because of, you know, what kind of day, or maybe they just had an argument with somebody.
Okay, I understand that. What Darrell was alluding to, I think we lost him, and no, he's there. He just took his Bulls hat off. I'm glad you took that Bulls hat off, Darrell. It was blinding me. I'm a Knicks fan. It's like toxic for me. Anyway, I think what Darrell was talking about is a little different from what you're saying. If I was speeding or driving erratically, that's cause for me to get pulled over. What Darrell is saying is I shouldn't get pulled over because I have my car looks a certain way, or I look a certain way. Now, once I get pulled over, how we communicate with each other, that oftentimes dictates how things are going to go between the police officer and the motorist.
Right.
The point is, if I'm not speeding, if I'm not driving erratically, what are you pulling me over for in the first place?
Okay, I understand what you're saying there, but I totally understand what you're saying, because yeah, that is a form of profiling.